Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Bushnell, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on maximizing SAP automation testing with AI strategies for success. At Pronix, we specialize in delivering cutting-edge digital and AI solutions, helping enterprises enhance their SAP environments with intelligent automation, advanced analytics, and innovative testing methodologies. Our mission is to empower businesses with AI-driven efficiency, transforming how they operate and compete in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. So brief about today's topics, we're going to be discussing how AI can revolutionize SAP automation testing by improving accuracy, reducing manual efforts, and accelerating execution. We'll be exploring best practices for AI-driven testing strategies for cost reduction, enhanced testing coverage, and scalability and adaptability that AI brings to SAP environments. So our goal is to provide you with insights and strategies to successfully integrate AI into your SAP testing process, ultimately driving higher efficiency and quality into your operations. So today I wanted to introduce first our panel of speakers. We're honored to have three panelists today that represent each component of a project. The user, Narayan, he is Director of Enterprise Applications with Delic in the oil and gas space, and prior at Tractor Supply, rolling out SAP S/4 solutions. Raj with SAP as a practice lead, and Bill from Tricentis, one of the leading testing automation solutions providers. In preparing for today's conversation, we realized there's a good bit of uncertainty in the industry regarding today's testing solutions and AI. The term AI, ML, generative AI, get tossed around, but let's share with you all how automated testing has existed, what is possible today, and what is the maturity of the testing solution space. So today I'm going to bring you into the conversation as we clear up the understanding of the use of AI in testing for our SAP implementations. I'm going to open up the conversation with a broad understanding from Raj with SAP of the best practices he has shared with SAP clients and the testing he has witnessed across his career. Bill is going to share how Tricentis defines the testing solutions for Raj's use cases. And then we're going to switch over and hear from Narayan regarding the testing he has done, and most recently the automated testing he's used, and what has he seen as gaps versus what he would like to be able to do. And then finally, Bill's going to share how Tricentis would define the best testing solutions from their point of view in regards to Narayan's current use cases. And then finally, we're going to shift to the art of the possible and what is on the horizon for generative AI in testing. So with that, we can get started. And Raj, can you share some experience on the automated testing you have used and seen used with SAP implementations?
Sure. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for that initial introduction. I appreciate that. And I think you set the right tone here. And absolutely. So this is Raj Pendyala, an SAP practice lead with over 20 plus years of experience, worked across several SIs and different types of projects across industries, including public sectors, led oil and gas, utilities, travel, transportation, manufacturing, several industries. Ran different types of projects, architecting the solutions, and running through those projects, took them live, and in the process happened to have gone through different types of testing scenarios, because testing is very much needed if you really want to go live, right? So we have several testing cycles we run. And earlier it used to be pretty much a manual testing, and then afterwards now a lot of automation has crept in and definitely helped the life better. As you know, manual testing, there are no tools, testing processes are done manually, whole lot of different types of manual tools are available. And they run those tests, I know there is a certain amount of risk of inconsistency happens, but over a period of time, the automated testing with tools, especially helped, and a lot of third-party testing tools, for instance, Tricentis, or some of their tools like Tosca and all available. And then with that, the test cases which are done in test automation are aligned properly with the latest features and functionalities and things like that. So definitely the testing team releases the test scripts, predefined business processes, and the process flows wherever applicable to speed up the overall testing process and the reducing the preparation time. So being said that, we have good number of scenarios and testing examples we can bring to the field. Now, for instance, first of all, why you need automated testing. So it's basically test automation with AI is for improving your test accuracy and also reducing manual efforts for SAP testing, right? So we'll look into some scenarios where, how really automated testing is used in SAP environments as such. So that's where I want to set this entire discussion today. As we go forward, my other speakers, Narayan and Bill, can talk about their experiences, how we are taking forward. Of course, they'll be talking specifically as we go by, and we can take this discussion lively and take it forward. Great. So in my view, there are 5-6 different examples or scenarios come into the picture. First, I want to mention about we've been seeing many S/4HANA migrations, whether it is a blue field, brown field, green field. We have several colors over there. And in that, test automation definitely is one important thing, whether you are doing a public or private cloud. It's a complex process. A lot of significant changes need to be done while going through the architecture and business processes, ensuring that all critical processes continue to function, and also after the migration, they are working all right. So now in this, the automation tools, you have SAP Solution Manager and the Cloud ALM and a whole lot of other third-party platforms. They are used to automate end-to-end testing of business processes. These tools definitely support different types of testing, including functional, performance, and also security testing. This is one scenario in a typical migration. And in terms of the automated regression testing, we have in many of the large organizations, SAP systems need to be regularly updated with new features, patches, and customization. Even though SAP pushing for clean core and also public cloud, but still now there will be some sort of customization. So manual regression testing becomes, I don't want to say impractical, but takes a long time due to the volume and the complexity of some of these changes. So I know you have, because of that, a lot of automation regression testing tools, as I mentioned, Tricentis, Tosca, or some other areas of in workshop like Certify, that are being widely used in large number of these regression test cases in the SAP modules. I'm sorry, anyone asking a question, or?
Let's see. Yeah, I'll look to some of the questions and we'll pull them in. I'm trying to watch and see if I think you're answering some of them as we go, and then we'll come back to them. So no worries.
Yeah, thank you. So the other one is I want to bring to you is continuous testing in the agile environments, right? So
Mhm.
more and more organizations are adopting agile and DevOps methodologies, So the need for continuous testing in the SAP environments has come up a lot and it's growing. As you know, the traditional manual testing is, as you know, the slow and it cannot keep up with the rapid development cycles. So again, as I mentioned, in these scenarios, these testing tools, automation testing tools, again, I want to mention Python Test Tosca or other things like Selenium and all those.
Right.
They're integrated into the continuous improvement, continuous delivery pipeline, CI/CD pipelines, that's what we call, enabled for the continuous testing. These tools can automate the entire execution of tests wherever code is required, providing immediate feedback to developers. So there's a strong use case there and scenarios. As we go, test data management and automation, which is also very much needed in managing the test data, especially in the large complex environments where there are several integrations and dependencies and extensions and all those things are there. Creating and maintaining accurate, relevant data is very, very important. So, automating test data management tools, and they are really required. They're used to create and mask and manage the test data. So those scenarios. And of course, while we do, SAP Fiori adoption has increased a lot. As you know, as we go forward from GUI to Fiori tiles, different tiles we need to bring in while we do the implementation. So these Fiori tiles need to be properly tested while we bring it to the implementation. So with this growing need and adoption of SAP Fiori applications, organizations need to ensure that these interfaces work all over across different devices and browsers. So it's important, these automation tools, they are used to automate testing across various devices and platforms. And of course, these support cross-browser, cross-device testing, so giving a consistent user experience and user interface too. So it's very important. And I just want to mention in the last, robotic process automation, RPA. Yep. So as you know, this RPA comes into the picture when they have repetitive tasks, such as data entry and validation, of course, which is common in SAP systems. And they're also equally time consuming to do manual testing, right? So this is important to have a automation here. So you have these RPA tools like VA-Path, and then if you remember, Blue Prism is another one. They are used to automate these repetitive testing tasks. So what happens is when you mimic all these user interactions with the SAP system, and these RPA bots can perform, tasks such as data validation, process automation, and even execute end-to-end tests. So these are, I think, I talked about almost 6 to 7 different types of example scenarios. So these successfully are being implemented in various SAP environments and leading to some improved efficiency, having a better test coverage, and of course, ultimately, satisfying the higher software quality. So these are some of the examples and scenarios, different areas that we come across in the software test environments.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's a great overview of kind of current state, a little bit if people are less familiar what is available and different strategies there, kind of why it came together. And continue sharing the questions in. I think it's going to inform as Bill gets in and talks a little bit, reflects on Raj's scenarios will try and help you understand. We're going to go through and you'll hear more and more about AI and how it's being used inside of testing. And I see there's some good questions about regression testing and other things. We're going to try and unpack all of that as we go through. Bill sharing how Tricentis tackles it, and then I think you're going to hear some examples too as Narayan gets into it. So just keep the questions coming. We see them. Bill, can you take a little time and kind of reflect on what Raj shared as the kind of 6 primary use cases, and probably help us all understand what you and Tricentis think of as core, what's kind of existing today and a lot of people are using, and then start to help us understand your model about kind of climbing up that maturity curve into kind of more advanced technology until we'll get to the generative AI piece here at the end.
Absolutely. And Raj, thank you for that perfect setup for our conversation and outlining the challenges that we're seeing, not only historically, but today. For those of you who saw me madly typing, I was attempting to keep up with the Q&A as you were speaking. So hopefully we'll have some good answers there for everyone. And one of the questions that really stood out to me, and Raj echoed, was, well, haven't we always had regression? Or haven't we always had automated regression? Let me put it that way. Let's face it, back in the day, we just co-opted the accounting department, threw pizza at them, and asked them to test all the changes that came in the finance module. So why has our automation never lived up to its promise to this point? What's different? What's changed? Why do we need something like AI to make it better? And that's because of this pace of change that we're now all incurring in our SAP environments. I was just on another call prior to this, and they said, you know, the transformation to S/4HANA is one thing, but that first change that comes in the system, that's the challenge. Because now you've gone from maybe 2 upgrades a year to, in some cases, dozens in a quarter. I can't pull the accounting department or buy enough pizza for that. So automations is key. But why hasn't it lived up to its promise? Because historically, we've been spending more time fixing our automation than running it. So where's the benefit in that? If I'm down 75% of the time with my testing apparatus because I'm repairing my tests, that is not positive ROI. In fact, I've seen some studies that say we're lucky to get 20% of our test cases covered with automation and keep up with what I like to call the maintenance trap. Mm-hmm. So where can we start to flip this paradigm and make automated testing a reality that provides benefit? And our founder of Tricentis, Wolfgang Plotz, came up with his 3 ideas for testing efficiency. One, and it was actually the first place we ever applied machine learning, or as we generically like to call AI. What if we could do less testing, but do it more intelligently? 2, what if we could take the identified tests and automate them in a very, very maintainable way, where we didn't fall victim to this maintenance trap, and incorporate elements of machine learning to auto-heal the tests if changes do occur. Now, his third idea was around performance testing, and I'll come back to that. But I did realize that I haven't introduced myself. Again, Bill Hayden, Senior Solution Architect here at Tricentis. I've actually been in the testing biz for 25 years, so this gray hair is very well earned, and SAP in particular since 2004, so I guess that's going on 20 years now. And I've used a lot of the competing tool sets in my time. In my 4 years at Tricentis, my eyes have been opened because as a service practitioner, someone who's run PSO organizations, someone who's tested SAP for 20 years, I always ran into the same barriers, whether it was that maintenance trap or whether it was not being able to communicate between the automation team who was writing things in scripts and the business who needed to tell me how an account flowed. What Tricentis has done is bridge that gap with a visual model-based approach to testing. I could give a Tosca test to someone in accounting and they could read it because it's based on visual representations of the screens. Now, where does the AI component come in? Because we could talk about regression all day. First, let's do less testing more intelligently. This was something we developed 6 years ago, actually through acquisition, with our live compare change impact analysis product. And I really think this is key, because running a full regression for each change that comes in the system simply isn't practical anymore. I was just, again, on another call today where I had a client that had 2,000 test scripts. And when we did an analysis, and they were running them on every change, We come to find out that was only 8% test coverage. 8% they're running 2,000 scripts. When we showed them the right things to automate for each change, we cut that to a fraction, 20% of that. And oh, by the way, expanded the coverage up to 80 to 90% because we were adding where all the gaps were. So using machine learning to, first of all, analyze a change that comes into the system, rank that from a risk perspective against how the system's being used day to day, and then intelligently identify the tests that need to be created or run is step one. Step two, the automation in the most maintainable way possible. So we're running more than we are fixing. That goes back to the idea of enterprise continuous testing. I heard Raj say continuous testing several times, and that is the title of our founder's book, in fact, Enterprise Continuous Testing. The only way that works is if you can keep your automation on its feet as the changes are coming in. We use neural networks for self-healing. Classic example in an SAP Fiori, that button that we all use in the lower right to go to the next screen, it changes labels and sometimes changes class depending on the transport that just came in. Our neural network can detect that on the fly as the test is running and fix itself at that moment, so the test doesn't stop, and so you don't get a lot of false positives. And then also for the integration points, SAP never exists in a vacuum. I read somewhere that every SAP implementation on average has 50 touch points with other systems. How do we test across that? What if it's a mainframe system? What is a mobile system? The Tosca platform allows you to handle all of that. And even with a very esoteric interface, maybe it's a homegrown system, which I see a lot in the manufacturing community, we have a special AI-based driver called Vision AI. Think about that as facial recognition for doing UI level testing. Doesn't matter what technology is being used, even some of the old heavy client technologies from the 90s. Our Vision AI driver will allow you to tackle that. Now that's the foundation for what we like to call machine learning or narrow AI. I talked about Vision AI, the self-healing, intelligent change impact analysis. We have yet to broach generative AI and how we're going to apply that to the testing problem. Now, we also had a conversation around test data, and I saw a question on that in the chat. At Sapphire this year, we announced our intention to apply generative AI to that problem with a product that should be coming later this year or early next year. So I would just say stay tuned for more information on the test data problem, because that is a huge, huge challenge. My old mentors always say, if you don't control your data, it will control you and what and how you can test. So I look forward to a lot more discussion on that. Now, I know I probably didn't cover everything. I know there was talk about CI/CD pipelines and incorporating the automation into that as more DevOps principles are embraced. We definitely build all of our technology around the ability to do that, because that's how you create enterprise continuous testing in the first place. And we actually just recently completed an acquisition that will also help optimize what tests need to be run in those CI/CD windows so that you can minimize your cloud spend bill. So you maybe save $50,000 a month on AWS spend or Azure spend because you're not running all of the tests in your repository each and every time. Another added benefit of applying AI to the problem. So of those six, what did I miss? What have I not commented on yet?
Well, let's, I don't know that there's anything specific. Why don't we let Narayan kind of go through his experience? That will probably give you a second bite at the apple. We'll hit some topics and we'll give you a little more time to share the Sapphire announcements and kind of where you think generative AI is going in the industry. Narayan, can you take a couple minutes and share a little bit of the projects that you're rolling out recently and how you're managing testing currently, the approaches that you're taking today, and some of the lessons you've learned so far, and any thoughts on things you would like to see coming in the test automation space going forward?
Yeah. Thanks, Rick, Bill, and Raj for setting the stage nicely. So I have about 17 years of SAP experience managing from R3 solution architecture to S4 and a lot of data and analytics, cloud applications, a lot of applications, BTP, mobile. So historically, as Raj touched on a little bit, testing is primarily SAP testing for the most part has been a manual testing where you sit with the functional experts, architects, and the user, write the test cases. It's a pretty involved process. And if there is something changes somewhere in terms of the architecture or functionality or the requirement, the feedback loop is very much broken because the testing team and a lot of these domain experts and business, pretty much, there is not a very good continuous feedback loop. That's the reason why Bill was saying the test coverage is very low. That's one aspect. Second, historically, a lot of these SAP systems are on-prem. So meaning you have a little bit of a control environment for testing.
Right.
Testing is pretty much manual. You are doing a lot of automation by either using some of these classical tools or leveraging your homegrown automation tools where you're kind of presetting those parameters. I saw a question about how AI changes those variables dynamically. I'll touch upon a little bit about that, but pretty much the automation is you're giving some instruction, it kind of repeatedly kind of kicks in that job, right? So there is not a lot of dynamism. So with this approach, what I've seen managing SAP projects is a lot of silos, a lot of manual work, very time consuming, and there are a lot of, as Bill said, because one team is building these automation tools, even with RPA type solutions, somebody is having to write those scripts because they are not fully automated. Or you'll be basically building a Java or .NET based application automation. It requires constant update. Now, a lot of those challenges right there historically. Now, when you move to S4, manage a couple of S4 now, the technology footprint grows very extensively, as Raj mentioned. S4 looks pretty simple as one solution, but if you really break it down and open it up, to make it a one S4 solution, there is a number of cloud applications working together. And there are applications on BTP, as an example. You have SAP Analytics Cloud, you have Excel add-in, you have ABAP development on the cloud, you have mobility on the cloud, the work zone. Fiori is a separate server that kind of sits on top of your SAP server. So if you look at all in all, there is probably 10, 15 plus cloud product working together to make one S4. The testing in this new environment in S4 is a little bit more challenging, even though from user perspective, it is a little bit more user friendly because now you're having to navigate multiple of these applications. With AI, what we've been learning is, you can use natural language processing. The change management would be easier. You would be able to trigger certain changes in one area that would help create the test, regression type test scenarios in multiple. As an example, let's say if you are an SD expert doing SD configuration and say change the pricing condition, prior to these automated AI type solutions, you would have to work with finance and SD and a couple of other areas, tax, consultant, to make sure you're covered from the regression perspective. Wherein in your world, you say, okay, my pricing condition is changed. Now, what are all it impacts in related areas, bringing and automatically creating those test scenarios, test cases, and kind of manage based on exception rather than just a lot of manual work and silos. One of the other thing I shared with the team was around the self-healing, managing this cloud application with ALM, in S4 environment. A lot of BTP component, they have their own upgrade cycles. How do you make sure upgrade in one component does not break on the other side? I'll share you an example recently that happened in my current company where SAP upgraded their BTP, then that made our backend S4 component incompatible to mobility. It was reactive. User actually informed us, that's how we came to know. Whereas if we had this AI type regression running in the background to identify this change, By the time we come to office, we've been calling our help desk saying that there is some exception going on. So it will definitely help manage those exceptions, manage our upgrades better. This is definitely the future that I look forward to. I've seen Tricentis AI solution I see incorporating into our day-to-day lives and make this more relevant, more integrated, not silos, less manual effort, more focusing on execution and exception, and also help manage the change. Change management is a big aspect, right? Testing. A lot of time, why do we do UAT? It's not just to test the functionality. The role of UAT is to manage the change, get the users familiar with the system, and get that early adoption, not just the testing, right? So this will, with the natural language capabilities of AI, if the user is not aware of how to create sales order, somebody would have to go to their desk or have a call, walk them through the steps, like an hour meeting.
Right.
Whereas in the future, you just type in, how do I create a sales order? Tricentis and AI-based solutions, walking through and creating the entire and running that scenario in the cloud. That makes everybody's life easier. So I'm looking forward to some of these new innovations. But any question for me around any of the S4 testing experience? Otherwise, I'll kind of answer as they come in.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll let Bill kind of give a little bit more depth on some of the points that you were bringing up and how you guys are using and what you're thinking about to just internal clients and how you manage them, as well as the testing process to be efficient for everybody. And then the natural language will continue that with Bill as well. And yeah, keep an eye on the question board. I think after Bill gives us a little more insight, then we'll get into the future, and also you can share some thoughts on some questions that are coming through. So Bill, just continuing to build, and I think as you had started to outline, but for people now with a little more context of certain projects, just that maturity curve and the different pieces that we put under the umbrella of AI to do a lot of the test case management that we were hearing about, and also increasing that efficiency like you're talking about for coverage with just a little bit more reinforcement would be appreciated.
Oh, certainly. And I heard natural language processing, and I think that is a fantastic segue into the next level of machine learning that I think everyone really wants to hear about. And that is this family of algorithms we affectionately refer to as generative AI, or large language models, that have absolutely swept the hype curve over the last 2 years.
For sure.
And I'm as excited as anyone about what all these variations of copilots are going to bring to us. The example that was just offered, if I'm a junior accountant and I don't know how to do a process in SAP, I don't have to call someone or have someone mentor me. I simply have the copilot sitting there with me in order to walk me through the process, with the promise being that we can be more productive. Now, I speak a lot about, will this replace people? I really do not believe that's the case. I see this as being a productivity multiplier. But at the same time, we're going to have to develop some new skill sets, such as, is what the AI is giving me correct? And that goes for QA tooling as much as it goes for something teaching me how I'm going to do this process in the accounting department. So I'm a big believer in QA for AI as much as I am for AI in QA. And all this is just going to lead to an incredibly accelerated pace. So if we go back to the testing problem in this, I want to start to touch on where generative AI stands today, especially in regards with the Tricentis technologies. There's a capability that will be coming out this month in our test management system that is actually already baked into SAP's Cloud ALM. And that is a generative AI engine that will analyze requirements, user stories, and auto-generate manual tests from that. Now, think about that from a day-to-day. I have to have that documentation. How do I know that what is generated is correct? Well, that's where the QA for AI comes in. So what it does is it gives you suggestions, and it can give you up to 10 suggestions at a time to say, for this requirement, here's 10 different ways you can test it. I was actually on the beta test team for this. It was very exciting because I was impressed with the things it thought of that really harken back to my old school days and first cutting my teeth as a quality assurance engineer. It's really reminding us of our old school skill set, such as, if I'm going to get the most out of this, how do I give the AI the information it needs? And that goes back to those old skills of how do we write testable requirements in the first place? Now, taking another step back for quality, because I think we're going to eventually talk about SAP Joule and some of the other capabilities that are coming with these copilots. There was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about 3 months ago that spoke to this. The adoption of all these copilots, whether I'm using a warehousing system to teach me how to do that better, an accounting system, etc., has run into one significant barrier, and that is the data house in order enough to get the most out of it? Notice I didn't say data warehouse. Right. Is your data house in order? And this is another aspect of testing and quality we haven't touched on yet, and that is data integrity testing and ensuring that the data is complete and correct. So when these copilots ingest it, so we get the most out of other aspects of AI, that we've already addressed the upfront work needed to be done. And that's an investment. And one thing we like to say at Tricentis is, although we do provide AI models for certain aspects of testing, we help people get AI ready to apply generative AI across any aspect of their landscape. So making sure your data house is in, ensuring that you have a quality practice around analyzing what the generative AIs are going to produce for you, and that the human in the loop decides, does this truly provide value? Because as quickly as we're adapting this in the quality arena, our friends who are creating applications are way ahead of us. And we are seeing an onslaught of a massive volume of code, whether it's an integration with SAP or whether it's any modification to SAP, that we have to keep up with. So we're going to have to use AI just to keep up with it. But at the same time, is the quality of what they're turning out any better or worse? So another stat says by the end of next year, 75% of all developers are going to be using copilots. Quality is now the last line of defense against that onslaught. I had a great conversation with the legendary luminary Michael Bolton about this in May, and really got some great insights. I encourage you to follow him if you haven't already, that we are going to need AI to keep up with AI, but we have to apply it intelligently with humans in the loop. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and jump to what's coming in the future just yet, but I cannot wait to tell you what the next iteration of generative AI is going to be to further help us tackle that challenge that we just outlined.
Excellent. Good. Well, let's take a minute. There were a couple questions coming through. I think one of them was, how do you expect AI technologies to evolve in SAP testing landscape over the next 5 to 10 years? I think you gave a little piece of that. And how can organizations upskill their testing teams to adopt AI-driven approaches in SAP testing? Narayan, did you have some thoughts there too?
Yeah, real quick. Deloitte with IT, our DKT we call it. We recently had first AI summit. A lot of learning. Maybe I would like to share. That will help answer a couple of questions related to really key questions. I've received a really great questions here. So one of the quote, if I will say this right or not, but I think you'll get the gist. It's not that everybody has to learn how to create an AI. The people who use the AI will replace the people who don't. Because the companies like Bill works at Tricentis, Deloitte, EY, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, Google, they are spending billions of dollars and making these tools very user-friendly, right? So us as a customer, the people working on IT and business to drive the business value, we need to train ourselves to leverage these tools. We don't need to jump on that wagon to start creating all our technology. It's not everybody has the resources or should be everybody's resources, because that's not the niche. That's not as a Dell, like our niche is to be able to process oil and gas and be logistics provider. We're not an AI creator. What we can do is probably early adopter of the technology. Our CTO, Ido, made it very clear about that we're not going to start creating AI, but we're going to sell this journey. We're going to leverage, go out there, attend the seminars like we're doing today, talk to industry experts, leverage the knowledge and see what's out there. And you start it small, right? Tricentis could be one. There may be out-of-the-box solutions. Other, start it small, see the value, and then expand on the other areas. I would say being knowledgeable about what's happening in the industry is more critical, and training, leveraging the training that you get from outside to get the small benefits, value adds. That's what I would say on how do you get started. And also, it's important that around the policies and practices, it's important that companies build their AI practices working with the compliance department, the regulatory department that every company has. It's not going to be a universal one standard for every company. Industry in oil and gas versus pharmaceutical versus retail. Some companies, technology companies, they may be a little bit lenient, flexible versus the companies who are in defense industry or energy and other areas. So it's important to work with the compliance team and figure out what that policy. But it's important to have that conversation.
Good. Appreciate that. Definitely from kind of inside a user, I know that a lot of people that are on this really appreciate thinking about it from your point of view. A question that's come out twice that I don't know that we've spoken to directly, and I think you kind of touched on it, but the question is, what are major barriers to adopting AI in SAP testing, and how can companies overcome them? I think there's also on the hype cycle, there's some sort of fear cycle where the unknown, and there's lots of stories and the holograms and all kinds of issues with AI that have made a lot of media coverage. Some of them are definitely valid concerns, but I think also there's just an unfamiliarity with how do you use this effectively, and particularly how do you speak to executive management teams that have heard one of these horror stories and are kind of viscerally reacting to the horror story versus the opportunity. So I don't know, kind of thoughts from each of you. I think you each see this from a different angle inside of a company with all the SAP clients, and then as you go through, Bill, trying to help people adopt capabilities that you all offer. So can each of you give me just kind of thoughts on how do you overcome organizational resistance to adopting AI in testing?
Well, I can start really a couple of points. How we started our journey at Dell, like really, with our new CTO and a new structure within our IT division. First thing that we did was to establish AI department. There is a dedicated team, just from the change management perspective. That team's responsibility is to get the org familiarized with the new latest. As you call it, it's a fear of unknown. How does that work really? When you buy a new car with a lot of feature on it, until you get really used to it, there's a lot of fear about, okay, what's going to happen? But as you socialize, as you do the change management, as you do some of those internal learnings, bringing the experts from the industry, there's a lot of fear about what happens to data, what happens to some of the intellectual property rights. When you look at it, there are many ways to, manage the risk around how do you share the data. AI does not necessarily mean that you're exposing all the data outside. You would kind of leverage the model that's out there and make it yours. And there are securities and the restrictions built around that, and you would leverage that. But really, you start with having that open dialogue with the leadership, with the business, within the IT, and socialize what does it really mean to execute on some of the early AI steps.
Great, appreciate it. Bill, as you're out promoting this and evangelizing it inside of a lot of organizations, how do you tackle the kind of organizational resistance and help kind of balance what is the benefit and what are the real risks when you're using a testing tool on applications in-house, and even, if they're SaaS-based solutions that are managed by other entities? How do you tackle that?
Well, first of all, we're in an era where the capabilities of particularly generative AI are outpacing anyone's idea of what their governance policy is. So the first thing we do is understand, do you have a group within your organization that handles governance? What laws are you subject to? What compliance? Our company was actually founded in Vienna, Austria, and as a lot of you know, the most sweeping AI legislation occurred in Europe earlier this year. So it's incumbent upon us to stay abreast of all of that. So we've actually developed an entire division inside of Tricentis we call Responsible AI. And that group's entire job is to stay up to date on the latest governance and compliance and regulatory impacts so that we know the industries we can and can't necessarily market this to. Now, this isn't a new challenge for us. As I mentioned, we've been using some level of machine learning for quite some time. Our vision AI technology, that facial recognition, actually required a lot of these same hurdles to be cleared. And we've had that in production for over 4 years. But I had a friend who worked from one of the large GSIs, and she wrote the GSI's compliance policy. And she looked me in the eye, and her parents are both high-powered lawyers, and said, Bill, we're in an era where technology is outpacing the law, and it's a little wild, wild west. So you have to act with an abundance of caution, because you don't want to implement something today that might be against regulatory compliance tomorrow. So we're going to see gradual adoption as people begin to understand what they can and can't do, how secure their data is, whether or not their data can leave their firewall, et cetera. And each customer needs to be tackled on a case-by-case basis with the full understanding that they don't have to leverage these capabilities necessarily to be successful. They will be more productive, but they can be successful even with some of the base non-AI capabilities of Tricentis. However, as one of my esteemed colleagues said, if you don't use AI, you're going to get left behind. And I think the rigors of the business world will meet and hold hands with the rigors of the compliance world for everyone's benefit in the very near future.
Gotcha. Raj, just co-pilots and such with SAP, have you tackled this challenge about the reluctance of organizations to use AI with any additional thoughts beyond what you heard from Narayan and Bill?
Yeah. Actually, that's a good question that we keep hearing this, how we now adopt AI in the regular SAP testing cycles. The two things quickly came to my mind. One is, first of all, the lack of understanding on the ROI. This is a pretty decent and strong point to justify the investment, because it's not going to be simple investment. They need to be clear what sort of ROI we are trying to get out of this whole thing, adopting this AI into the SAP testing.
Right.
For instance, what sort of benchmarks and how we really create or define these metrics, and then how we are going to do the monitoring continuously with the AI. Some of these areas need to be clear before really get onto the bandwagon of AI into SAP testing. Other one is change management. You need to clearly implement a robust change management strategy there. And you need to involve key stakeholders early in the process. They're like any other typical change management process. You need to communicate, how AI can bring those benefits. So these two are the key areas that need to be clearly overcome really before start looking into AI in SAP testing.
Great, thank you. All right, well, so we've tackled maybe the greatest of all the questions. What are the barriers? Before we turn over to the final piece, Bill, which is, what is the art of the possible? What is on the horizon? So assuming we can get our organizations and we can safely, reasonably get some good organizational buy-in, what do you see on the horizon? What are you guys looking at doing to use kind of the true generative AI? I think what people were looking for in particular in this conversation today.
So when we started this journey with generative AI, there was one question that kept coming up. Okay, I see that you've tackled the auto generation of manual tests. When will you be able to tackle the auto generation of automation? And I'm pleased to report that is entering beta testing this month as we speak. It should be available early next year. Now, what does this look like? Let me walk you through its evolution and how it will ultimately apply to SAP, because we actually unveiled this at Sapphire back in June, and I had the pleasure of running that portion of the booth. 18 months ago, we took a generative AI agent and gave it a mobile test and said, without any coaching or prompting other than some base training and no Tosca test behind the scene, I want you to go in and turn on the power saver. We didn't tell if it was iOS or Android. We didn't tell it how many steps it would take. But it looked at each screen in the process, generated the Tosca on the fly, the Tosca test at the moment of execution, ran that to get to the next page, and repeated this until it achieved its objective. So what I was left was with a full execution, an execution report, and a completed test. 6 months later, we expanded that to work on our web-based demo application. And 6 months after that, SAP Fiori, which is what we showed at Sapphire this year. We simply told it, I want you to go through and create a purchase order with this data. Didn't tell it how many screens, didn't tell it which objects to fill in. We had trained it appropriately. And it was able to go through at the moment of execution and build that test and execute that test simultaneously. So now think about the ramifications of this for any test automation. We talk about maintenance. If today it's 10 screens and tomorrow it's 15, it doesn't matter. It regenerates on the fly. All the time built into SOWs up front to build out those base models and base flows. Right. Now we're maintaining that at the level of create a purchase order for me with this data. That's going to shift the onus to some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat, which is now how do we handle the test data component? So we have called this autonomous AI or autonomous testing. We're talking about it at our world tour shows, which we're doing all over North America and Europe and JPAC as we speak. So I encourage all of you to look into this because I think this is really going to be the game changer. So imagine a world now where we run that change impact analysis up front that we've been talking about. It identifies all the tests that need to be run and optimizes them for effort, looks in my test repository, sees what I've already built, runs it, self-healing auto-corrects any of the quote-unquote sick tests, and then the testing gaps I have, the things that I had not built yet, get automatically generated from high-level descriptions coming out of the change impact analysis. So now my job as a tester is to look at that process and understand where are the gaps? Were the tests created by the generative AI, as we mentioned before, of value? Were they correct? We're going to see whole new roles on projects that will go along with ensuring, again, quality for AI and not just AI for quality. But I really think autonomous testing and how it's going to come onto the scene is going to be a huge game changer, and we'll really start to feel the impacts of it next year.
All right, well, I love it. I think everybody's eager to see it. Terrific. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap for today. Really thank you all for joining us, and special thanks to our panelists and speakers, Narayan, Raj, Bill, for sharing such valuable insights. We hope this discussion has provided you all with some actionable strategies and a clear understanding of AI's transformative role in SAP testing. If you have any further questions or wish to explore how Pronix can support your AI-driven testing journey, please reach out to us. Thank you again, and have a great day ahead.